There's a hidden law that governs success, one that most people overlook in their pursuit of achievement. It doesn't begin with taking. It doesn't start with strategy or tactics or even effort. It begins with giving, the kind of giving that expects absolutely nothing in return. It's a simple concept, yet it holds the power to transform your entire life. Because when you give from a place of authenticity and generosity, something deep within you changes. Your mindset shifts. Your heart opens. And the energy you put out into the world begins to attract opportunities, people, and outcomes that once seemed unreachable. But here's what separates the truly successful from the rest. They don't give to get. They give because it's who they are. They understand that real power doesn't come from chasing results. It comes from aligning with a principle that's greater than themselves. Giving without expectation isn't weakness. It's strength. It's courage. It's the mark of someone who knows that the universe operates by a deeper order, one that isn't seen but always felt. It's about trusting that when you plant good seeds, even if no one notices, they will grow. Maybe not tomorrow, or maybe not even next month, but they will grow. And when they do, they produce a harvest far beyond what you could have imagined. But most people don't last that long. They give once or twice, and when they don't see instant results, they stop. They turn bitter. They pull back. And that's when they block the very success they were hoping to find. Because the secret is in the consistency. It's in giving again and again, not for attention, not for applause, but because it's who you choose to be. When you live this way, you become magnetic. People can feel it. Life responds to it. Doors start to open, not because you're pushing them, but because your energy is inviting them. The irony is that the less you demand from life, the more life gives you. The more you release control, the more things fall into place. This is not about being passive. It's about being intentional. It's about giving your best, your time, your attention, your effort, your kindness, and doing it with a full heart. No agenda, no calculation, just pure contribution. And when you make this your way of life, you begin to tap into a power that's far greater than hustle alone. You'll start to notice that the world shifts around you. People want to help you. Ideas come more easily. Challenges lose their weight. You walk with a quiet confidence, not because you've mastered everything, but because you've mastered yourself. You no longer live in fear of what you might lose, because you understand that everything flows from giving. And this kind of giving doesn't deplete you. It strengthens you. It fills you up. It reminds you of what really matters. Because in the end, success is not about how much you accumulate. It's about how much you become. And the only way to become more is to give more. Not from scarcity, but from abundance. Not from ego, but from purpose. This is the starting point of lasting success. Give without expecting, and watch how everything you once chased begins to chase you. Energy is never lost. It transforms, it moves, it circulates, but it never disappears. What you put into the world comes back. Not always from the same source, not always in the way you expect, and almost never on your timeline, but it always returns. When you pour out frustration, bitterness, or selfishness, that energy lingers in your environment. It shapes your outcomes. It influences your mood. It builds a wall around your potential. But when you release something pure, kindness, honesty, encouragement, support, it doesn't just impact others. It rewires your own mind. It lifts your own spirit, and it sets in motion a current of positivity that travels far beyond anything you can control. The truth is, life is always reflecting who you are inside. Not what you say, not what you demand, but what you radiate. This is why some people, no matter how hard they work, can't seem to break through. It's not because they're lacking talent or discipline. It's because their energy is rooted in taking, in needing, in expecting. They try to force life to reward them before they've even invested in it. But it doesn't work that way. Success is never hunted down by desperation. It is attracted by intention, by service, by the invisible but undeniable frequency of someone who gives without strings. You become magnetic when your actions are no longer laced with hidden motives. When what you give is not bait, but a gift. That is the shift. That is when things begin to change. Think about the kind of people you naturally gravitate toward. They're not the ones who constantly ask, constantly demand, or constantly compete. You're drawn to those who uplift without being asked, who contribute without keeping score. Why? Because their presence feels light. It feels honest. It feels rare. And rare things attract attention without even trying. The same applies to you. When you start giving, not just things, but attention, focus, discipline, love, you rise in value. Not because others say so, but because your soul aligns with something real, and real always finds its way to the top. So you have to ask yourself, what energy are you putting out daily? Not in the big moments, but in the small ones. Not when the world is watching, but when no one is. Because that's the energy shaping your path. That's the energy coming back to you. Every word you speak, every intention you carry, every action you take, it's part of a loop. What you project today determines what reflects tomorrow. If you want a better return, offer a better energy. Give the best of who you are, not because you'll get something back, but because that's who you've decided to be. And that decision alone will change everything. Expectation is the hidden chain that binds most people to disappointment. When you give only to get, you've already planted the seed of frustration. It's no longer giving, it's a transaction. And the truth is, the world doesn't always pay you back the way you want or when you want. That's where most people get stuck. They give something, a favor, a compliment, a gesture, and wait. They watch, they track, they expect. And when nothing comes back immediately, they grow resentful. But resentment poisons your power. It turns the beauty of generosity into the bitterness of entitlement. Expectation in its quietest form is a demand for control, and life cannot be controlled. It can only be influenced. The moment you let go of needing something in return, you unlock an entirely different level of peace and power. Letting go of expectation doesn't mean you give blindly or foolishly. It means you give from a place of security. You give because you've already decided that who you are is more important than what you get. That kind of decision is rare. That kind of mindset is what separates the fulfilled from the frustrated. Because when you no longer attach your worth to the outcome, you free yourself from the emotional roller coaster of constant disappointment. You give what you choose to give, and then you move forward without waiting for validation. That is the highest form of strength. It's not about becoming numb. It's about becoming focused. Focused on what you control and detached from what you don't. You can't control how people respond. You can't control who reciprocates or who walks away, but you can control what you offer to the world. You can control whether you act from fear or from power. And when you act from power, when you give without clinging to the result, you create space for the right things to enter your life. Things that are not forced, not manipulated, not begged for, but aligned. When you stop demanding, you start attracting. That's the paradox. The more you release the need to receive, the more life gives you what you truly need, not what your ego wants, but what your growth demands. There is no peace greater than the peace of someone who knows they did their part and doesn't need the world to pay them back. That kind of peace becomes a magnet. It makes you unshakable. Because the moment you stop expecting, you start experiencing. You begin to see the value in the act itself, not just in the reward. And that shift changes everything. It rewires your mind, it rewires your future, and it unlocks a version of success that no one can take from you. There is a certain kind of strength that never announces itself. It doesn't demand attention, it doesn't chase approval, and it doesn't need to be recognized. It simply moves in silence, consistent, grounded, and focused. That is the power of quiet contribution. When you give without the need to be seen, you step into a level of influence that cannot be measured by applause. You begin to operate from purpose instead of pride. And purpose is far more powerful than performance, because performance fades the moment the audience leaves. But purpose stays. Purpose grows. Purpose builds a legacy that lasts long after the noise has died down. Quiet contribution is not weakness. It's the highest form of self-mastery. In a world obsessed with visibility, it's easy to fall into the trap of showing everything you do, to post it, to prove it, to wait for acknowledgement. But the truth is, most of your greatest growth happens in the moments no one will ever see. The sacrifices you make in silence, the discipline you apply without being told, the effort you give when no one is clapping. That's where your real power lives. Because when you can give your best without needing a reaction, you show yourself and the world what you're truly made of. That's when you stop being controlled by approval and start being driven by your own standard. Giving quietly builds inner strength. It teaches you patience. It sharpens your focus. It removes ego from the process. And when ego is gone, only excellence remains. Quiet givers don't wait for the world to notice. They keep building. They keep showing up. They keep adding value in ways that ripple far beyond what can be measured. And the beauty of it is this: eventually the world can't help but notice. Not because you demanded it, but because results always speak louder than recognition. When you contribute consistently from a place of truth, success becomes inevitable. You don't need to raise your voice to raise your impact. You don't need to announce your greatness for it to exist. You just need to keep giving, keep pouring into your purpose, keep investing in others, in your craft, in your vision, without waiting for a round of applause, because applause fades. But the results of quiet, steady, intentional contribution, they compound. They multiply, they create momentum that outlasts every trend, every opinion, every obstacle. And when success finally shows up, it won't be a surprise. It will be a natural response to the energy you've been putting out all along, the energy of silent power, the energy of someone who gives not to be seen, but because that's who they are. You are either a source or a drain. You either energize the world around you or you silently pull from it. Every word you speak, every action you take either adds or subtracts. And that choice becomes your identity. The moment you decide to become a source of value, strength, focus, and clarity, your life begins to shift in ways that logic can't fully explain. People become drawn to you. Opportunities begin to move toward you. Not because you're chasing them, but because you've become someone worth finding. That's the difference. The world doesn't respond to neediness, it responds to value. When you carry the energy of someone who gives, who contributes, who uplifts, you become rare, and the rare are always sought after. The most magnetic people in life are not the loudest or the flashiest. They are the ones who give more than they take. They're the ones who listen when others only speak. They're the ones who offer solutions instead of complaints, energy instead of doubt, patience instead of pressure. Their power doesn't come from a title or a spotlight, or it comes from a decision to be a giver in a world full of takers, a decision to bring light where there's darkness, strength where there's fear, calm where there's chaos. And that kind of decision reshapes everything around you. Being a source means you stop looking for what others can do for you and start focusing on what you can give to others. It doesn't mean you let people use you. It means you operate from overflow. It means you've built yourself to a point where you give not to impress, not to manipulate, but because it's in your nature. And when giving becomes natural, success becomes inevitable, because the world never forgets the ones who helped them rise, the ones who believed when no one else did, the ones who shared when they didn't have to. That's the kind of energy people want around them. That's the kind of presence that opens doors, even when they're locked to everyone else. So if you want more from life, stop asking what you're missing. Start asking what you're giving. Become a person of deep value, not just in knowledge, but in spirit. Not just in talent, but in character. When you become a source, you don't need to beg for opportunities. They find you. You don't need to chase success. It comes looking for you. Because success is always searching for the ones who serve, the ones who give, the ones who bring more to the table than they ever take. And when it finds you, it won't just stay, it will grow. Because value never goes unnoticed. And a true source is never forgotten. The world measures wealth in money, in bank accounts, in property, in titles. But real wealth, lasting wealth, is built in something deeper. It's built in trust, in impact, in how many people rise because of you. Money can vanish, markets can crash, but the value you've poured into others, the seeds you've planted through generosity and service, those can't be taken away. They multiply in silence. They bloom when you least expect them. Giving is the highest form of currency because it always pays back more than you invested, just not always in the form you expected. You might give your time today and receive a connection a year from now. You might offer help now and find yourself being helped when you needed it most. That's how the universe works, not by direct exchange, but by invisible return. Giving rewires your relationship with life. It removes the scarcity mindset, the one that says if I give, I lose. That fear is an illusion, because the truth is giving multiplies. Every time you give your focus, your knowledge, your encouragement, you add more value not only to others, but to yourself. You start to see your own worth in a different light. You realize you're not emptying yourself. You're expanding your capacity. You're becoming someone the world wants to reward, not because you asked for it, but because you earned it without ever demanding it. The greatest return doesn't come from what you hold on to. It comes from what you release with intention. When you give from a full heart, you create emotional wealth in others. You build a kind of credit that no economy can crash. People remember how you made them feel. They remember who was there when no one else showed up. And one day, when you least expect it, that energy comes back, stronger, deeper, multiplied. You won't need to force your way into rooms. You'll be invited. You won't need to beg for support. It will already be there, because you gave first. Real success is rooted in value, not in noise, not in pretending, not in self-promotion, but in actual tangible value. And giving is the fastest way to build it. When you focus on becoming someone who makes life better, for others, for your environment, even for your future self, you tap into a power that goes beyond strategy. It's spiritual. It's magnetic. It's unstoppable. So stop counting what you might lose by giving. Start realizing what you stand to gain. Because when your wealth is built on contribution, not consumption, it becomes a foundation that no storm can shake. That's the kind of wealth that lasts. And it all starts the moment you give without keeping score. There is a hidden strength that few ever master, and it's called detachment. Not the cold, distant kind, but the powerful, peaceful kind. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. It means you give fully, love deeply, act boldly, but without trying to control how things unfold. You learn to release, to let go, to offer your best and walk away with your head high, whether recognition comes or not, whether reward arrives or not. That's real power, because when you give and still remain whole, you're no longer a prisoner of the outcome. You are free, and freedom isn't just a feeling, it's a force. It draws better things toward you, things you could never reach while you were still gripping so tightly to expectations. Most people give and then wait. Wait for the thank you. Wait for the favor returned. Wait for the success they think they deserve. And when it doesn't come fast enough, they shrink. They grow bitter. They stop giving. But that bitterness is not a sign of failure. It's a sign of attachment. The more you need something to happen, the more your energy becomes desperate, heavy, and blocked. Detachment lifts that weight. It says, I did my part. The rest is not mine to control. That's not indifference. That's wisdom. That's trust. That's emotional maturity. Because when you can let go, you make space for better things to come. Life has a strange way of rewarding those who don't beg, who don't demand, who give their effort, their energy, and their attention without needing the universe to pay them back on their schedule. When you give and let go, you become unshakable because you're no longer basing your identity on results. You're not addicted to recognition. You're centered in your purpose, not in your performance. And that energy is magnetic. That kind of inner calm doesn't push success away. It pulls it closer. Think about it. The people who seem to receive the most often ask for the least, not because they don't have needs, but because they've mastered the art of giving and trusting. They've learned that holding on too tightly suffocates growth. You can't plant a seed and keep digging it up to check if it's growing. You plant it, you water it, and you walk away, trusting the process. The same goes for everything you give in life. Detachment doesn't weaken your giving, it amplifies it, because now it's pure, now it's from the heart, now it's powerful. And that kind of giving changes everything. It makes you a force the world can't ignore, not because you demanded attention, but because your energy spoke louder than your words ever could. Most people never realize how close they are to a breakthrough when they stop. They water the seed for a few days, maybe a few weeks, and when they don't see instant results, they walk away. But the truth is, real growth happens in the invisible. It happens underground, in the silence, in the stillness, in the space where you can't yet see the reward. And this is exactly why giving without expectation is so powerful. Because the ones who keep giving, who keep planting, who keep nurturing, even when there's no visible progress, those are the ones who wake up one day surrounded by blessings they never saw coming. Life doesn't ignore your efforts. It just works on a different clock. And if you need to see instant returns in order to keep going, you're operating from fear, not from faith. The world belongs to those who are willing to be patient in the dark, to those who understand that what is invisible now will become undeniable later. You give your best, you pour into others, you stay committed to your values, and you trust, not because the signs are obvious, but because your belief is stronger than your doubt. That's what separates the few who rise from the many who quit. It's not talent, it's not resources. It's the ability to keep showing up when nothing around you is validating your effort. The ability to keep building even when there's no applause. That's where real growth happens. That's where future success is born. Invisible growth is not just a waiting period, it's a proving ground. It's the test that determines whether your motives are pure. If you give only when it benefits you, your giving is shallow. But when you keep giving long after the excitement fades, when you stay consistent after the spotlight is gone, that's when you build something unshakable, something rooted, something lasting. Success isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's hidden. Sometimes it's wrapped in struggle and obscured by delay. But make no mistake, it's still coming. If you stay faithful to the process, it always finds its way to the surface. So don't curse the silence. Don't despise the waiting. This is where you're becoming the person capable of holding the success you're asking for. It's in the invisible seasons that character is forged, vision is sharpened, and purpose is purified. And when the results finally arrive, they don't just reward your actions. They reflect who you've become. And that version of you, the one who stayed, who gave, who waited without growing bitter, that version is ready for anything. The law of multiplication is silent but relentless. It doesn't ask for attention. It doesn't announce its presence. But it works. Always. When you give something with sincerity and no strings attached, that energy never stops moving. It travels. It grows. It collects interest in places you'll never see until the day it comes back to you multiplied. Most people miss this because they're trained to look for quick rewards. They expect immediate validation, instant gratification, and fast returns. But real success doesn't move at the speed of convenience. It moves at the speed of trust, patience, and consistency. And that's why those who understand the law of multiplication play the long game. They're not moved by how fast the reward comes. They're focused on how deep the roots go. You don't need to give massively all at once. You just need to give consistently. A kind word here, a helpful action there, a moment of your time when you could have looked away. These things seem small, insignificant even, but every act of giving, when done from a clean heart, plants a seed. One seed might produce nothing for a while, but keep planting, keep watering, keep trusting. Eventually the momentum builds, and what once felt like a trickle of return becomes a flood of blessing, opportunity, and success that feels almost too good to be real. But it's not luck. It's the harvest of what you've been sowing all along. What you give multiplies, but it multiplies on its own terms. You might give effort to one person and receive opportunity from another. You might give time in one place and see your reward show up in a completely unrelated part of your life. That's the beauty of it. You're not in charge of how it comes back. You're only responsible for putting it out there in the right spirit. Life does the rest. And when it returns, it often returns in a form that doesn't just bless you, it humbles you, because you realize that every quiet act of giving was being counted, even when you thought no one noticed. So don't lose faith in the process. Don't think your efforts are wasted just because the results are delayed. The law of multiplication is not broken. It's just building something bigger than you can see right now. Keep giving, keep believing, keep doing the right thing even when it feels invisible. Because the return is never empty. It's never equal. It's always more. And when it finally shows up, you'll look back and realize none of it was random. Every seed had a purpose. Every effort mattered. And everything you gave without expecting is now coming back multiplied. The race you're running isn't against others. It's against who you were yesterday. Yet so many people get caught up in comparison. They look sideways at what others have, how fast they're moving, how loud their success seems. But comparison is a thief. It steals your focus, your joy, your peace. When you constantly measure yourself against others, you lose sight of what really matters, your own journey, your own growth, your own unique path. Giving without expecting anything back means you stop looking sideways. You stop worrying about who's winning or losing. Instead, you focus on your own contribution, on how you can add value in your own way every single day. There is power in becoming obsessed with your own progress rather than other people's results. When your energy is spent trying to outdo others, it becomes scattered, anxious, and ineffective. But when your energy is devoted to becoming a better giver, a better listener, a more patient person, you build something no competition can touch. You build inner strength, you build resilience, you build character. And character is what carries you through the hard times, the times when others quit because they're focused on someone else's finish line. Giving without comparison keeps your eyes on your own prize, and that prize is growth. When you contribute without comparing, you create a ripple effect that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval. You're no longer giving to get validation. You're giving because you understand the value of contribution itself. This mindset transforms your actions from obligations into opportunities. Instead of measuring whether your efforts are enough compared to others, you measure them by your own standards, your own values, your own integrity. This shift is powerful because it roots your success in something stable, something lasting. It's not shaken by envy or jealousy. It's not broken by setbacks or obstacles. It's anchored in your own consistent giving. The secret is that success doesn't belong to the loudest, fastest, or most visible. It belongs to the persistent, the patient, and the generous. When you stop competing with others and start focusing on contributing more, you unlock a deeper form of power. It's the power of self-mastery, the power of knowing that your worth isn't defined by anyone else's story. This is when success begins to chase you, not because you're faster or louder, but because you are real, because you give without conditions, without comparison, and without limits. And that is the kind of success that lasts forever. True strength isn't about dominating others or climbing over them to reach the top. Real strength lives in service. It lives in the willingness to lift others even when you're still climbing yourself, to share wisdom when you're still learning, to offer help when you don't expect anything in return. That kind of strength requires humility, the humility to know that your power is multiplied when you empower others. It's easy to believe that success means taking all the credit, standing alone and guarding your gains. But the greatest leaders, the most respected souls, the ones who leave a lasting impact, they serve, they give, they pour their energy into others without keeping score, because they understand that the true measure of power is how much good you do. When you serve without strings attached, you transform your relationships and your environment. You create a ripple that grows beyond your immediate reach. The people you help today may one day become the very reason you rise higher tomorrow. But even more than that, service builds character. It builds a reputation that money can't buy and influence that no title can grant. To serve is to lead quietly but powerfully. It means your actions inspire others, not because you say so, but because you show up consistently with generosity and care. That is a magnetic force that attracts not only success, but respect, trust, and loyalty. Service is strength because it breaks the cycle of scarcity and fear. When you give freely, you declare that you believe there is enough for everyone. You refuse to live in competition and scarcity. Instead, you live in abundance and possibility, and that mindset change is crucial because scarcity creates walls. Abundance builds bridges. When you serve others, you're building bridges that connect you to opportunities, ideas, and people who want to see you succeed. You become part of a bigger network of support that fuels your growth and sustains your journey even through the toughest seasons. To give without expecting is to live from a place of true power. It's a radical act in a world driven by demands and conditions. It's a choice to rise above ego and entitlement. And when you do this consistently, you build a foundation that no failure can shake. Because service is not just an action, it's an identity. It's who you become. And who you become is what success chases. So embrace service as your greatest strength and watch as your life transforms in ways you never thought possible. There comes a moment when the balance shifts, almost without warning. After you've given consistently, without expecting, without keeping score, life begins to respond. It doesn't come as a loud announcement or a sudden windfall. Instead, it arrives quietly, almost gently, like a current beneath the surface growing stronger. Receiving becomes effortless. Doors open without you knocking. People show up without you asking. Opportunities appear in places you never thought to look. This isn't luck. It isn't coincidence. It is the natural consequence of living in alignment with a deeper truth, that giving without expectation creates a force that pulls success toward you rather than pushing you to chase it. This moment is often misunderstood. Many expect receiving to look a certain way: money, praise, recognition. But the return on genuine giving can take many forms. It might be a powerful connection that leads to new growth. It might be a shift in mindset that opens doors inside your own mind. It might be a sense of peace and fulfillment that no external achievement could ever bring. The reward for giving is not always immediate or obvious, but it is always meaningful. When you stop chasing what you think you need and start trusting what life is offering, receiving transforms from struggle into flow. Receiving without effort is a sign you have mastered the art of giving. It means you no longer grasp at outcomes or cling to results. You have surrendered control and embraced trust. This trust creates space for abundance to enter. It removes the blocks created by fear and expectation. And in that space, life moves freely, bringing to you what you truly deserve. You begin to notice that success is not something you force into your life. It is something you attract by becoming someone worthy of it. The act of giving without strings attached is the doorway to this state of being. Ultimately, you realize you were never losing by giving. You were building a foundation of integrity, generosity, and purpose. And that foundation becomes the platform from which everything else rises. When you give freely and without expectation, you set yourself apart. You move beyond scarcity into true abundance. And at that moment, success stops being a distant goal and becomes your constant companion. It chases you because you have become a force of genuine value, a force the world can't help but respond to. Giving without expecting is not a strategy or a tactic. It is a way of life. It's a commitment you make to yourself and to the world around you. When giving becomes your natural response, your default setting, success no longer feels like a distant dream or a hard-to-reach goal. Instead, it becomes a shadow, quietly following you wherever you go. You don't have to chase it. You don't have to plead for it. It comes because you embody something rare and valuable, a spirit of generosity untethered by conditions, a heart that gives freely even when the world isn't watching. This way of life rewires your entire experience. It transforms how you see challenges, how you interact with others, how you measure your worth. You learn to live beyond the need for constant approval and external validation. You find strength in your ability to contribute without calculating the cost. This mindset shifts your energy from scarcity to abundance, from fear to faith. And when you live from faith, doors open, paths appear, and success finds you even when you're standing still. It's not magic. It's the natural law of cause and effect, of energy returning to its source multiplied. To live this way, you must commit to giving as your purpose, not your project. It's not something you do until you get what you want. It's who you are every day, in every moment. You give your time, your attention, your effort, and your kindness without strings attached. You give because it fulfills you, because it aligns you with a higher truth, because it sets you free. And in this freedom, success stops being a struggle. It becomes inevitable. So choose to make giving your lifestyle. Choose to release expectations, detach from outcomes, and trust in the process. Choose to become the kind of person who lifts others without needing to be lifted. When you do, you won't just watch success chase you. You'll feel it, breathe it, live it every day. Because giving without expecting is not just the path to success. It is success itself.